Pressure's on.
I know.
Awesome.
All right, I'll move out of your way in just a second. As soon as it goes, okay. In meeting.
Okay.
Go. All right, now run.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. Please allow me to introduce our guest. This is a pioneer functional medicine practitioner, lives in Utah. He's helped a lot of us understand, especially me, this vast problem that's affecting our population, this MTHFR. He wrote this awesome book called The 85% Solution. I've read this probably 2 or 3 times. I keep getting really hung up in the very beginning. I just love how you break down and make it much easier to understand this problem that's affecting a lot of the population. And I just want to have you help us please introduce our guest, Dr. Dan Purser.
Oh, me? Hi, how's it going? Thank you for having me on. This will be a nice experience. And I'll answer your questions. I'll cover whatever you want in this little interview. So however I can help.
Okay. Tell me a little about yourself, first off.
Well, I grew up in Oklahoma in the middle of nowhere, and left high school a little early. I went to Princeton to undergrad. I had a scholarship there, but I didn't really like it that much. Felt out of place after a semester. Ended up eventually joining the LDS Church and got a scholarship at BYU and came out to Provo, Utah, and loved it. The mountains, the beauty, the really pretty blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls at BYU. So compared to Princeton, sorry, Princeton. And I had this weird dream. I wanted to run in the Olympics, but I never became very good or good enough to do it. I made the team at BYU, the cross country and track team, but that's about it. But anyway, I went on to medical school. And because I was young, I went to Old Miss. My parents were living down there. My dad ran oil production companies and stuff, and so I was a resident. So I went to Old Miss to medical school in Jackson, and loved it. And then I did my residency up at the University of Utah. Came back here and been here ever since. I think 34, 35 years.
Awesome. So what kind of events happened in your practice experience that led you to investigate this a little further?
I had, in Utah, there's a really interesting phenomenon. All the young men, not all the young men, but most of the young men, especially the LDS ones, tend to go, or the Mormon ones, tend to go on LDS missions, to-year missions, proselyting missions, and service missions. And some of the wealthier parents would come in. I have a cash-only practice I've had for years for a number of reasons. I would check their testosterone levels. They wanted me to do this intrastate or vitamin panel I learned about while I was down at USC and stuff. I was down there doing endocrinology research, by the way, but and I kept getting low testosterone levels on all these young men around here, and I couldn't figure it out. I thought they all had these weird vitamin deficiencies too, B12, folate, pantothenate, zinc, stuff like that, and all the same pattern over and over and over again, like you'd see probably with a vegetarian or vegan, but none of them were vegans, and they were all very tired and exhausted before their missions, and which is weird for a 19-year-old boy to be tired before his. Yeah, he should be full of energy. I was. And I was going to medical school then. But so I couldn't get my head around what was going on with them. Down at USC, we'd done all this endocrinology research. We often got these vitamin panels on people because my friend down there, who was the U.S. Assistant Surgeon General, he loved that SpectraCell micronutrient panel. It looks at intracellular levels. And I talk about it in that book.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, was #1 for 2 years in the medical genetics section on Amazon. So, which was weird. I didn't expect that. But so we would do these panels on people thinking they don't have pituitary dysfunction. It must be something else. They didn't have damaged gonads. They didn't have anything else going on. It had to be a nutritional deficiency. And I just saw so much of it. And then I treated them with off the shelf vitamins, like Centrum and stuff like that. And these young men would come back 2 years later from their missions, and the parents would bring them in, would retest them. And I got the same pattern. I thought, wow, they wasted taking those vitamins, and they'd swear they took them daily. They did everything they could. They still felt exhausted, felt kind of nauseated taking the vitamins. And finally, I went online, started looking around. I saw some of Ben Lynch's stuff. I saw several other popular naturopaths' works on MTHFR. And I thought, that's got to be it. Maybe they have MTHFR. So I started testing people. And the more I tested, everyone came back positive. Eventually, I had 700 results on people with MTHFR and 700 SpectraCell results on the same. None of them were on any vitamins or supplementation. And so we designed some formulas off that for patients to take, and it worked really well. That's kind of how I came to this whole point. I figured out that it's really common here in Utah because we're of Northern European descent. I'm not. Well, looking at me, I guess I am. And I know I am. I have a version of it myself. I have the A1298C. I have one of them, but it still causes me problems. But we had a lot of people from Northern European descent here in Utah. Thus, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls at BYU and the blonde-haired, blue-eyed people in Utah. It looks like some kind of weird Northern German country here sometimes. Don't get me wrong. I love Utah. I love the people, but we're very much of Northern European descent here. Mm-hmm. And my wife, however, is half Latina, and she has blonde hair, blue eyes too, which is kind of weird, blue-green eyes. And when I met her and stuff, and
they're affected a lot more. Is that right?
She actually is descended from Spanish royalty. She's a Marquesa in Zaragoza, which I didn't know about. She told me that later. And her dad's parents his dad ran the banking system in Mexico and also run it in Spain. Mexico brought him over. And her dad was blonde-haired, green eyes. They're a Castilian. And those are Vikings who went up there and settled the Castilian region. So she had a very bad version of the MTHFR. She's compound heterozygous. She has one of each. And she had really severe B12, folate, pantothenate, choline deficiencies, just a mess. And that's kind of how I came to this through my family, her family, and myself and herself. So
awesome. So are those kind of the events that led you into writing that book?
Yeah, well, I looked around. I couldn't find a rational MD derived. I wanted to do something for MDs that would get some respect. I'd had, I think at that point, like 11 #1 books on Amazon and stuff. I thought, wow, maybe this will reach someone and the MDs will read it. They don't really buy into this very well. So I wrote it and it became incredibly popular. And I've spoken about it all over the world and including all over the US. I don't think it still hasn't gotten that far into the MD community. They treat my brothers and sisters who are MDs, not physical brothers, genetic brothers and sisters, but in the field, in the profession. They tend to use antidepressants, amphetamines, things like that. When someone comes in and go, I'm fatigued, they'll give them an amphetamine. And maybe check them for anemia, like check their CBC, make sure they're not iron deficient. That's not very effective.
Just a basic blood test and not looking a little
thyroid. They don't even do that good a job, respectfully, looking at their thyroid. So, I mean, I had a really interesting take on that myself, just because the work I'd done with a guy who's a U.S. Assistant Surgeon General from Harvard, NIH, Walter Reed. Anyway, we looked at thyroid a lot differently than what your average physician does. But
thyroid's kind of the canary in the coal mine, right? That's just the kind of way I was taught. Is it's got the smallest like glass of them all. if you start getting ill, and various organ systems, again, depend on the person as well as how resilient they are and how nutritionally adequate they are. And as they start to get illness, it's like each organ system has its own, almost like a flask that starts to fill up, and the thyroid's almost the smallest one. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree totally with that. My point earlier, I'd see these low testosterone levels in young men. If you don't have the proper nutrition going in, you're not going to build the right hormones on the other side. You're not going to build enough thyroid if you have a zinc deficiency, or certainly B12 deficiency or folate deficiency. You're not going to build testosterone. You're not going to build estradiol. You're not going to build progesterone. And so I also see a lot of women, or tended to see a lot of women, younger women with ovarian, they call it insufficiencies. They used to call it ovarian failure, which is unexplained ovary failure at a young age. And because they didn't have a way to look at intracellular vitamin and mineral levels. Someone can have a normal B12 level because it's cyanocobalamin floating around their system. Cyanocobalamin, if they have MTHFR, can't get into their cells. So if you look at intracellular levels, they'll be incredibly deficient because folic acid and cyanocobalamin can't get into their cells. It just kind of floats around and causes inflammation in these patients. So I'd see ovarian insufficiency. I'd see guys with low testosterone, low IGF-1 or HGH levels, low thyroid production, all that. And it's just this weird package of ovarian insufficiency or endocrinological failure. So,
yeah.
And that's why I was trying to figure out what was going on. And it's not always MTHFR, but it mostly is MTHFR.
Yeah. I think a lot of that too, if it's not MTHFR, has to do with just the amount of xenoestrogens in our environment, the plastics, the chemicals, the high number of endocrine disruptors that we're exposed to. And
but until you, I agree with you, but until you, sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry about that.
No,
I'm such a doctor. We're horrible about interrupting people, but until you rule out vitamin deficiencies, you can't pass that judgment. And then I rarely get to that point because there's such a mess from not having enough B12, zinc, folate, pantothenate, choline, and aminos that also disappear with MTHFR, that it's a problem. So
yeah, and they need those for detoxing.
Well, that's true. MTHFR is really about ATP. And if the Krebs cycle, ATP, it kind of starts to get over everyone's head. But a normal carbohydrate molecule, and I kind of diagram this in the book, when a normal human takes in one carbohydrate molecule, it should come out with 32 ATP on the other side after it goes through your cell, your nucleus, your mitochondria, and then the Krebs cycle, boom, out comes 32 ATP. But someone who has an 80% reduction in their enzymes due to MTHFR will have a 80% decline in their ATP per carbohydrate molecule. So instead of 32, they come out with 8, and they've been doing it their whole life. And the rest of that goes to fat if they're homozygous C677T, that is, and that's the worst form of it. If you're homozygous A1298C, it's 70% reduction. If you're compound heterozygous, like my wife was, and like a lot of people I see out here are one of each, it's really a 75% reduction. So they're always behind and have been their whole life and can never catch up. And so they choose slower jobs, less stressful, if they work at all, some of them. And they're tired all the time. They go home at night and crash. They can't figure it out. Or after the third baby they've had, they can't function, and they end up being put on antidepressants and stimulants, amphetamines. Oh my gosh, it's horrible. So yeah. I could talk about this for hours. Clearly,
no, I understand completely, and that's why I wanted to seek out your expertise. What are the most common symptoms and signs you see with this that you often see with the MTHFR problems? Fatigue,
number one, fatigue. And number two, anxiety, especially as the day goes on, they get more and more anxious. That's why you see a lot of my YouTube videos and stuff lately on anxiety. It's a big problem, and it can be really, for some of these people, incredibly constant. And clearly it's not just MTHFR. They can have other genetic issues and things like that that impact upon MTHFR even more so. And sometimes, I mean, like I looked at some labs, a NutriHacker on a lady yesterday, a complete NutriHacker, and she had 17 homozygosities. And then I'll see someone with 3. And so, but they'll have a lot of little heterozygous stuff going on. Heterozygous is 1, homozygous is 2. Yeah. Now, let me back up a minute here and explain that MTHFR, the original genetic error, these are not mutations. These are transcription errors that have been passed down for maybe thousands of years. Yeah. And the original transcription error occurred, they think, because they kind of traced it back to Norway or somewhere in there, Denmark, somewhere, some Viking king, I suspect, got it. And they didn't have our morals, and they weren't Christian back then and all that. And they just did whatever they wanted. When they were king, they got to get with everyone in the kingdom that was good looking. And so it spread around. Suddenly this guy had 70 kids and they all had MTHFR from him, and eventually just kept growing. So my wife, who has 1 of each, she's related to everyone else who has MTHFR on the planet, because it came from one source, they think, not multiple. And I have the mild version, the A1298C. So whether I want to admit it or not, I'm related to her. It could be 700 generations ago, but because I'm really from Austria. I'm descended from Austria, which is Northern Europe still. But so everyone who's got these are all related, which is crazy. If you think about it, there's probably 1 billion people with MTHFR, and somehow we're all related.
Yeah, it's pretty astonishing to imagine that. So
yeah, maybe not 1 billion. There might be a couple 100 million of us, but still, it's crazy. Yeah.
I fully understand the lack of other doctors, taking the time to investigate this. Last year, I had an incident where I had to go to a hospital to help one of my patients' husbands. And there we are in a cardiac unit in a hospital. And I looked right at him and I said, we need to run a clotting factor. Something's plugging him up. And his homocysteine was 26.9. And
the number one cause of people having younger people having unexpected heart attacks or strokes, right there.
Yes.
High homocysteine.
Homocysteine. Oh, I see that all the time. But there it came back on the blood test, and there I am in a hospital, and they said, what is that? Yeah, last year.
Yeah.
So
it's the most inflammatory thing you can have in your body, as far as I've been able to tell, at least cardiovascular wise or stroke wise. If you know someone in your family or a friend or anyone who's had a stroke or a heart attack and they're 32 or 28 or 38 or whatever, you better check a homocysteine level on them and all their family members too, because chances are they have MTHFR and then increased clotting and stroke risk. If you look back at Life Extension, August 2017, I think it was one on brain anti-aging. Mm-hmm. That's our, so I'm putting a plug for myself. That's our MTHFR support. They were talking about, we have a patent on that. We had to notify them. I think they were coming out with something like that. And we had to notify Life Extension, and they never came out with the product. But what they did, they detailed our product for us. The reason doctors don't look at this too, just as an aside, they all go to the net. They Google everything too when they're seeing a patient, and they don't get it. The number 2 most viewed website or URL or whatever link on Google on MTHFR is by Charis Ing of the Cleveland Clinic, an MD, PhD, CHARISENGH. Dr. Ing just says if they don't have a high homocysteine level, don't treat them, don't worry about it. Wow, well, that's not what Life Extension article says, and that's not what I say. And you're going to put someone at risk for severe depression or anxiety through the roof, or a heart attack or stroke if you don't deal with this.
Arthritis too, it causes a number of problems, right?
I agree. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So it's good to watch out for that. We run that on everyone just to look out for those hidden factors. And again, getting a good family history of seeing if they had early heart strokes. I mean, you could find it pretty easily if you have a good history. And
most doctors don't do that anymore.
Yeah,
you're supposed to, but I just don't see it in the documents I get or anything else. I'll spend sometimes 30 to 45 minutes of my hour-and-a-half visit with a new patient or 2-hour visit with a new patient just to find out their medical history. Like you, I'm being a medical history detective.
Investigator, yeah.
What you got to do.
That's you have to do today. It's you know, and I did a cardiovascular lecture a while back, and I even kind of brought up that the president of American Heart Association, John Warner, 52-year-old practicing cardiologist, November of 2017, he tells the entire American Cardiology Association, all this conference room full of cardiologists, telling them he's got the family history, his grandfather, his father, everyone, and the next day he has a heart attack. That just shows you that cardiologists are not really, looking into this deeper as well. So, and I never really got the full MTHFR understanding. I had a really good idea of it, and I was treating it, but to understand it a lot more, your book was very, very helpful for that, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Is there any new books you're working on for us to watch out for in the future?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to come. Well, a couple of things. One is not just books, but I'm getting ready to come out with a series of videos that'll, I'm sure, will be on YouTube. We'll put them on Facebook, but they'll also be, we'll turn these 7 videos into a book for physicians and people that want to have it as a reference. But it's where I connected with this company called GX Science. I love their genetic testing for in-office use. I've been looking for years for a good one, and I like it mainly because of their geneticist is really sharp and really has good insights into genetic issues. Unlike all these other geneticists I've worked with, these other companies that are clueless, they'll say, "Well, MTHFR isn't really that important, but let's look at this other stuff." And I'm going, "Wait, like that's one of the most important things I deal with." But and we're taking 7 cases just like this, and we're discussing them and with a PowerPoint and side-by-side videos, and so that'll be available. We'll also turn that into a book. Just 7 cases of all kinds of genetic issues that we go through, and we also got one that we're coming out with that I'm going to put on Facebook that is where a 1-year-old baby, we test their genetics, and they have some inflammatory genetic errors that are homozygous. The issue is his brother, who's 15, had some of the same genetic errors, and when he got his vaccines, became autistic. I just came out with a few weeks ago. I posted it on my Facebook about Cheryl Atkinson's work on the FDA and how the guy admitted that in rare cases, kids do become autistic with shots. Wait, what?
Yeah.
What does rare mean, and why are you saying this now? Also, I posted the article about the one guy who stole several $1 million from that study and disappeared. So the FDA just kind of quietly shut that study down, closed it up, and never really reported any of the stuff they did on it, except for, it's good. No, it wasn't good. It was horrible. But so in light of that, and then with this genetic information we have on this kid, we're advising them not to take the shots or to space them out, which would be probably the wisest option. Again, remember, I'm a Western MD, and I get to pretend like I'm a naturopath occasionally. It's the only one.
I loved your references in your book for saying, yes, I am a Western doctor, and I apologize. I thought that was great.
Well, because we've done such a disservice of this, but don't get me wrong. I love physicians. I love MDs. Utah Medical
At least
Association
you're
rep for my
recognizing-
county, but
At least you're recognizing the, the things that aren't working and looking into what does work. So
it does so many good things. I get people off of antidepressants, off of amphetamines, off of, are you kidding me? It's called root cause medicine. It's what you're doing. It's what I pretend to do. At least I try, but still I've got to honor that Western MD concept still, but for licensing purposes and everything, but still in malpractice, but still, and I've never been sued because I do look at everything, but there was a really interesting study that was published in JAMA in 1998, October 18th, 1998 by Stanford. And everyone should go look at this, but it's where Stanford, they interviewed more than 1,000 patients as they were leaving doctors' offices. And what they found in that is that 69% wanted more natural options and weren't being given those options.
wow.
It published in JAMA, which is the Bible of Western medicine.
Yeah.
And it got ignored.
Yeah, of course it does. There's published studies out there that never make it out to the public.
Oh, tons of them. We did a study at USC on titanium and the allergies it causes and stuff in the blood, and it got shut down. We never got anywhere. We had to just deep six the study, even though we completed it. And I never said any of that, erase all that, but yeah, so interesting stuff we found out.
Yeah. Well, I think we're getting close to time, and I want to honor your time. You need to get going. One last question. What's the best way people can purchase your book? What's the best way?
Oh, Amazon, get it off Amazon, cheap. Look at it. If you have questions, call you or call me or whoever.
Okay.
If you need to dig a little deeper, try and get a SpectraCell done, they're really handy. Watch for my video on that little kid with the GX Science and the because Brad Mullins and I are going to talk about that case and the inflammation that the shots can cause. And well, I don't know how far into the weeds we'll get on shots causing autism, but it's clear they do. The FDA has admitted it now. And from a Western perspective, I've got an MD perspective. We go, wow, that's kind of insightful. Even though I, like all of you, I suspected it for years, but
now it's starting to come in.
Yeah, watch for that video. And if you have one child who's had, like that family has had one child with autism, and you suspect it came from the shot, it'll give you some ideas of what you might want to do to prevent any of your other kids from going down that road. And still possibly, you still might want to vaccinate them. So I will say I had a daughter who we vaccinated. She's our youngest of 10 kids we've had. And she still got whooping cough because there are strains of it now in the US that weren't here 10 years ago. And she got it. And the vaccine, of course, didn't help her at all. We also did a big study on, and that was really, really tough. We used, by the way, nothing worked with her but oregano. We made oregano tea every night and would cut off her cough, just an aside. It's the only thing we found that could help that. And she finally beat it, but after 6 months. But also we found that
cordyceps are really good for that cough. I've
heard that too. We tried so many things, but the oregano, which is incredibly numbing to the throat, you got to make it a tea, worked like magic for her.
Yeah, it's 40 times stronger than garlic. Oregano is. It's very potent. Very potent.
I wouldn't doubt it. It was pretty. We'd always sip it too, and it was nasty, but yeah.
All righty, sir. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for meeting with us today. All right.
No, I love it. Thank you. God bless.
God bless you, sir.
And let's conquer the world and get rid of MTHFR. Not going to happen, but we can try at least the symptoms. So
yeah, at least the people that are wanting our approach. They're open-minded and they're wanting to look deeper into their symptoms. One of my mentors always said, and I think this is beautifully said, we don't need more doctors. What we need is more people willing to do the steps necessary to make themselves healthy. And that's
what you're really accurate. Wow. Well said. I think we need more people with curiosity.
Yeah.
I read this quote by Einstein, supposedly, where he said, "A true sign of intelligence is imagination." And I thought, no, I think you got it wrong. A true sign of intelligence is super curiosity about everything. Still, and even if you're 75, even if you're 25.
And
So-
humans have that natural curiosity, and I think we need to stoke the fire on that and stimulate that, especially in our children more than anything else today.
Exactly. Well, yeah, it's true. Thank you. So, wow. Thank you.
My pleasure, sir. Again, thank you for your time. All right.
No, this has been great. Thank
Awesome.
you. Okay. Bye-bye.
You have a good one.